let's go ahead and get started. Let's see. Go to the, unless you guys want to go over the receipt side with Roger first.
Judge, could I have just a few
Yeah.
minutes to explain something?
Yeah.
I know in the last couple of budget meetings you had, you brought up this $24,000 administrative decision. Do you understand what that is?
Well, I can only go off of what we were talking about as far as what we saw on paper.
So you don't understand what that's for?
Well, can you explain?
Well, just the 40-hour payouts?
Yes.
No, it just was submitted to the treasurer's office for 40 hours. We don't know what that is.
We were told there was another book.
Yeah.
We haven't seen the other book.
Yes, sure. No, I think that it's been explained in the past. Maybe I haven't explained it every year, but it has been explained in the past. My employees, we recognize 6 holidays, 6 major holidays. So, and I believe the rest of the counties, 13 and a half, I think, if I'm correct.
And that's in your policy, I take it?
Yes, yes. And
Do we have a copy?
now, I will tell you, this part is not in it because
Okay, wait, what part's not in it?
the 6 holidays is.
Okay.
Okay. Now, what we do, and we come up with this several years ago, we do an on-call pay.
Who's we? Now, I want to make sure.
Me and the former county attorney,
Okay.
and I guess the former judge also. Compensate them a little bit, instead of giving them another 7 holidays and costing us a fortune, having to have more employees and everything, we done a 40-hour pay for an on-call to help compensate a little bit instead of having all these other holidays and stuff. Am I making any sense there? So actually, it's really a savings instead of me giving 7 and a half more holidays. Also, I don't pay overtime or double time and a half or anything. Now, if you work, you do receive a day off at your discretion. So I guess it is like double time.
I guess the question I have is, if it's not in your admin code or your policy, then it actually isn't written.
Actually, Judge, I get it approved through my budget.
Okay, now, if it's approved through your budget, and we're trying to go by the budget and the policy, that's, when Brad calls down and asks, hey, this isn't matching up, apparently there's another set of books. You've got, from my understanding, you got one person logging in.
What's not matching up?
Okay.
So what my question was, I had a question about an employee that had been off work for several weeks,
Correct.
from what I was told. And when time clock is put in, it was just straight normal time is what it says. Timesheet entry, job code was jail. Well, none of them, so it wasn't pulling from an accrual from what I could see. So one of your staff said that you guys had a different book that you keep accruals on, and we don't know what that is.
But you didn't send that down when he become my employee,
Was him what down?
his accrual.
No, because they said that he would.
I mean, he notified us of what it was.
Yeah, he said.
But I don't think, when we have, correct me if I'm wrong, when we have somebody on vacation, I think it just shows straight time. So
Well, that's how it's being entered right now. As it's being entered right now is as if we don't know when they submit timesheets to
I don't
get
think
paid.
they was ever told to do that.
Right. So that's why the question was, well, why is this looking as straight time or as if they worked?
They probably don't know how to.
Right. So that's kind of where what we're gonna tighten that up a little bit so that when timesheets are turned in for payment, we know that it's either that they were there working, or it was accrued vacation or sick. So, and we can shore all that up.
That'd be great.
I think the question that we had on the 40 hours payout was, and I was even told that you guys don't recognize any holiday at some point.
We recognize 6 holidays.
Okay, that's where the confusion was, because we couldn't find where that was consistent with your policy, not seeing those in there, right? So that's where the question was.
The easy way is it has to be in the policy. All of it has to be in the policy.
It's in my employee handbook. It's not in my policy procedure book.
Do we have a copy of the employee?
I don't think I have that one. Sorry.
I believe you asked for the policy procedure book. I mean,
Yeah.
we didn't know, then there was nothing specified what we was looking for, so.
Yeah, and I was under the assumption that was all part of that policy that you had sent us. I didn't know there was an employee handbook that also kind of guides that portion of it. So my mistake, I didn't know that I had asked that.
Just communication's not
Sure,
real good.
sure. Yeah, and you sent me your policy, and that's what,
But with that being said, I mean, it's pretty common sense that 40 hours of straight time is going to be better than acknowledging 7 more holidays being paid for and people being off. I mean, and Judge, you did. You sent me a letter. I sent you a letter back acknowledging that. You recall that?
Yeah, I do.
I mean, I acknowledge what that.
And my letter basically said you don't have the monies. Where in your budget, when you say it was budgeted, we were identifying an $800,000 shortfall. And to me,
I apologize, but you know what?
that's the biggest
Last year,
issue.
I was pretty much handed a budget with about $71,000 cut on it. A few weeks went by, and I thought, I'm going to check, make sure everything's okay. Then it was a 151 or 152,000 cut. Didn't say a thing. Then right before, probably a few days before you guys passed the budget, I checked it again. I think it was like 202,000, and I did call you then. I called you, and we talked, had a good conversation, and I told you, I said, hey, Judge, I'll do my best I can. But, and I did with what I had. But I wasn't notified of any of these cuts.
Wait a minute. We sat down and we discussed last year's budget. Every department except one actually took a cut. Actually sat down. We sat down with the staff.
Judge,
and,
I didn't,
and we took the cut.
if you recall it, we didn't argue about it or anything. I just said, hey, okay, I'll do the best I can.
Everyone had tightened the belt. We had to.
But that's what I'm saying, though. The communication is not very well because, and I'm not, maybe it was done wrong back then. I used to be able to sit down with the treasurer because, they certainly, they've got all the programs, they can punch it in and it comes up. And I believe 2 years ago, I'm almost positive, I think that I told Eric, I said, now this is what I do with my employees, blah, blah, blah. Now, I didn't have the opportunity last year to sit down and do that. But every budget year, though, I always tell them, hey, I want to put this in, and this is what it's for. I've never had a problem with this in the past.
Just a couple questions. Maybe this is not on topic of what you two are talking about, but there's just a couple questions on just looking at the timesheets. So when they enter, and I understand when we started putting your employees in time clock for payroll, it was just hey, your two office clerks, we're going to enter their time. Their time is entered as 9 to whatever, whenever they work, like 9 a.m. to a stop point, however many hours that is. So we can't look on here and see that a jailer worked, 1 a.m. to 10 a.m. It just is a 9 to whatever. But my other question was, so you said you don't pay any overtime? That you don't pay any overtime?
For holidays?
No. Oh, that's you meant for
He was
holidays.
just talking about holidays.
Okay.
Sure, I pay overtime.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, and you made a great point the other day, a great point. For the overtime I paid this year, I could have had 2 full-time employees. Well, if you'll recall, I was cut an employee last year because I had an opening. I was cut an employee 2 years ago because I had an opening. So actually, I've been cut 2 employees the last 2 years.
Sure.
I
Well,
mean,
Actually, we budgeted an opening and they were never filled.
Which is why I think it was cut.
That's why it
Two-
was,
2
that's
years.
why it was removed, is because you never fill those positions. We
2
budget
years
for those
ago.
positions.
that is true. 2 years
And-
ago, I had not.
But let's get to this budget.
Give me
Because
just- give
this
me-
is,
But Judge, hang on one second.
no, hang on a second.
No, I can explain a lot of this stuff because you know what? You made allegations against me the other day.
I
Please.
I didn't make allegations.
Please give me a chance to explain.
I didn't make allegations. The information that we have, okay, the communication, it's not a communication issue, because when he calls down and asks for information, he's told what your staff tells him. We can only
Number
go
one,
off.
It wasn't a telephone call, it was an email.
Okay. The communication is, he's going off of what he's getting from your staff.
And did you not get what you needed? I mean,
I-
no, they didn't put it in, I'm assuming. But
Right.
I don't think they've ever been told to.
Sure. Yeah, I did get, the question was answered, but my concern was just if we don't know, if they're accruing thousands of hours of sick or vacation or PTO or whatever you have, that's obviously that's a cost. There's a budget. So what I guess we're asking, those decisions are going to have a dollar figure next to them. And when we see somebody that's off and continue to be paid for no work performed, that was my question. I remember when I first started, they said you can't pay a person for work not performed unless they are taking any hours that they accrue, that they've earned. And that's total, I get that. So that was my concern, is are we paying somebody for work not being performed and they're not taking any of those paid
No,
earned
He
leave?
has took vacation time. During that period, though, he has also been there several different times also.
And that's what we don't see when we look at time clock. We
Right,
just
right.
see these timesheet
Well,
entries.
and some of these are in the middle of the night, and I will say I'll do a better job at that.
Well, what we can do, I think.
Yes, and I think what we need to do is have the actual employee clicking in, not a clerk going off of a sheet that is prepared by somebody else. The actual employee, this solves the whole issue across the county wide. The actual employee, when they time in, I go off my own experience. I never had anybody click me in or time me in, punch my card. And this is a huge red flag for auditors because, hey, I could say, hey, Monty, clock me in. We put a system in place to where the actual employee clocks in.
Got you.
And I'm even going to go further. I think we need to go back to the statute. I don't know how it was done in years past, but I think to help resolve or to put aside any miscommunication, I think the jailer should come and inform the court on those statutory requirements as far as what, and I know it says may, but I think that the court should hear from the jailer monthly as far as who's in our jail. I mean, there's a whole lot of questions. Are they state inmates? Are they county inmates from Marshall County? Are they inmates that are being brought in from other counties that, how much are we charging them? Those things, I think we're at a point where we really need to know what's, so where we don't get into this, misinformation, if we want to characterize
You
it
let me
that.
know the information you want me to bring to the court, and I'll be glad to.
Well, I mean, yes, I will.
And also during all this, now, not only, I've lost 2 more employees this week. And at $13 an hour, it's tough to hire. I want you to understand that. I mean, it's not like I've got a stack of application people knocking doors down. I lost 2 more this week, so with that being said, unfortunately, there's going to be some more overtime. I mean, I'm running bare minimum as it is. And with this COVID, I just want to run by you guys because to let you guys understand some of the duties, extra duties that we've took on because of this COVID. And actually, one of them, my guards have actually, through this COVID, because my trustees had COVID and was locked down, but they've done dishes, they filled trays, they've served bills, they've done laundry, they've done janitorial work, the extra sanitization that we do, they do it. We do virtual court now, so we actually have to stay with these inmates. Sometimes it takes 2 guards in there, and when you're running, you don't even have enough people to work. Our pretrial service is either virtual or by phone now. There again, that occupies an officer. We have extra screening on the intakes. We actually scan every piece of mail that comes in there now. And I know that you talked about our nurse and wearing 2 hats. I mean, I don't know exactly what 2 hats mean, but all of my people wear more than 2 hats. Now, they only get paid for 1 hat, but every single one of them wear more than 2 hats. I've got a great staff out down there, always have, and they do whatever it takes to get the job done. And I don't know exactly what the problem is with my health care. I mean, she multitasks, and thank goodness she does.
Are you referring to the meeting that we had where you said she was wearing 2 hats?
The meetings I had.
No, your comments are referring to the meeting that we had with the treasurer where you told us that she wears 2 hats.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and you
I'm
said in the
citing-
meeting the other day that you didn't like the idea of wearing 2 hats.
Well, then let me ask you this. How do you determine when she's a nurse or, I'm assuming, a bailiff? Or not a bailiff, but a jailer?
Number one, and with this being said, I want another officer in there with her, but she can actually see inmates by her.
It's a simple question. I'm just asking. When
Just
she's,
because, you know what, if we have somebody that calls in at 6 o'clock at night and can't come in, and she comes in and works the floor, she works the control room.
okay, so
And with no
then
extra pay.
that's the answer. She's not coming in a 8-hour shift performing as a nurse, and then within that 8-hour shift, she's also performing as.
For example, yesterday we had a female, I believe it was yesterday, day before one, we had a female that was getting out. It was yesterday, had 2 officers on the floor. Now, when I say that, I've got one in my restricted custody building also. So I got 2 officers on the floor that's busy. We can't relieve our female that's in the control room to come back and get the lady ready to leave. So yes, my nurse, which is also deputized, is able to go in there and get her prepared to leave.
Okay, then that is consistent with what you told us. She wears two hats.
Yes.
Okay, I was citing what you told us. She has two hats.
I guess the other day, though, maybe I took it the wrong way, but I thought you said you didn't like that.
Well, I've got concerns. We all know that with dealing with the class of inmates that you deal with, lawsuits are always pending.
Oh, exactly.
Always pending.
Always. And we've been very, very, very fortunate with a lot of luck also.
Yes. And
In
yes,
my-
I mean,
my
I've got
over 20 years of
concerns.
being jailer, I've been sued one time.
Doesn't mean that you
No.
can't be sued
They
again.
may be lined up today, you're correct.
And that was my comment, and that is my concern. So let's get to the budget that's
let's.
at hand.
I have spent since when did we meet? Last Wednesday, I guess, trying to understand this all better. So I apologize to the other departments. I probably haven't had time to spend with this, but I feel a lot more. I mean, yes, it's obviously concerning, but I certainly feel a lot more comfortable than I did just listening to everything last week, just looking at a few other jails like ours. I mean, here's what I would say as it relates to COVID, and you all can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't believe there is another department, revenue-wise, that has been affected like the jail, direct to COVID. I mean, OTA has, that's if you count that as a department, but there's no other department revenue-wise, and you tell me if I'm wrong, that has been directly impacted by decisions based on COVID that were out of our control, by the way. I mean, we've talked about that. The state makes decisions out of our control.
911 has
absolutely one of
been
them.
with the landline fees,
Not-
but it's not to this scale.
No, yeah.
Because it wasn't that,
I mean-
landline fees weren't that lucrative in the first place.
And I know what you're saying, Monty, but the jails have been affected long before COVID.
I don't disagree with you,
And that
but
subsidy is just continuing to grow.
I don't see that.
We've put
I don't
about
either.
$800,000 into COVID monies that we have put into this.
Pre-COVID, I don't agree with you. Pre-COVID, I don't see that. I mean, let's look.
No. Jail reform has been on the table long before COVID. It's still on the table. There's a conference that I'm signed up for next week. Jail reform has been on the table. I was speaking with judge executives that have had shortfalls with their jails long before COVID. COVID did have an impact. In the $1.4 million of COVID monies that we received, $800,000 is what we have committed so far. And even into this next budget year, the $400,000 that we're committing. So the COVID monies that we have received has been beneficial for our community to help. But the majority of the COVID is like Erica was saying, that is going to any department is the jail because of those state inmates.
Yeah.
But if you look at those receipts that had been budgeted in years prior, they were increased going into a COVID year. And we sat down and we talked about this. I even specifically asked, is there anything coming from Department of Justice or Corrections about preparing for a reduction of anything? Our association, the Magistrates Association, they beat us over the head. The Judge Executives Association, CAECO, that's why I brought a $4.2 million receipt for OTA. Because, we had a spectrum of nothing as far as counties preparing for the COVID, to 40% reduction, even 20% reduction. And we discussed this in open court with this court.
Yeah, I didn't say we
So
didn't discuss
we
it.
prepared a budget the best that we could, and we have committed COVID dollars to this operation. But when you increase your receipts going into a COVID year, you know, and we discussed it.
March of.
Where did we
20,
increase receipts?
March of 20, when we met, I actually checked it yesterday. In March, and I apologize, I did know how many states it was, but we averaged 247 inmates in March. I have 200 beds. So inmate population was still way up at that time. Now, I think after March it started dropping some, but in March, I believe we was averaging 247 inmates. And with that, I do not recall anything coming from Department of Corrections about any kind of release at that time. I can't recall when the releases started happening. And with that being said, you know how many is going to be released. You know, it started off people that was in bad health, you know, an age group that was in bad health, and then they just continued on releasing them.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I
don't see exactly what you're meaning by increased receipts. It doesn't, I guess from 1819 to 1920, it was increased. But then it was flat, even though it, had $300,000 more in revenue.
From 1.5.
We kept it flat.
From 1.5, over the past several years, it's been around 1.5, and
Okay.
it was increased to 1.6.
Okay.
And when we were tightening the belt, that's an area where the belt could be tightened.
But but what we did though, we didn't
I'm just
increase
saying.
expenses during that.
The belt could have been, but everything that we did with all the accounts that we have and all the departments that we have, we went through and we cut. We asked the department heads to make cuts, and we even advised that, we're going to have to be cutting these budgets. The subsidies that we're given, we're going to have to reduce these subsidies. And we came up with, and we subsidize out of the occupational tax heavily. And we came in at 4.2, it was increased to 4.7. And that's in reference to what you were talking about, not knowing. I just don't understand how people say they don't know when we have public meetings and we have budget. The budgets are displayed in public. We came in with 4.2. It shows line by line what the dollars are. Everybody knew what the budget was last year. And it was increased to 4.7. We subsidize out of that occupational tax account. The only accounts we do not subsidize out of is ABC, and those restricted dollars. But every other account we subsidize out of. And so that was reduced. Now,
I will say, I understand, I've heard it several times. I still do not feel, and I know I'm the one who suggested it, but I do not feel that was a irresponsible thing to do fiscally, and I believe that this year has proved that out. So, I don't.
what are you talking about irresponsible?
Well, I don't think it was irresponsible for us to take the 4.2 that you suggested and go to 4.7.
No one said that was irresponsible. The court approved that. That's the budget that was put on the table, the 4.7. No one's saying that anything was irresponsible. I want to make that clear.
Okay.
I'm going through the process here. The process was a budget of 4.2 for OTA was presented, and it was raised to 4.7. That has been done in open court. That's the process. There's nothing that's insinuating from, especially me, saying that it's irresponsible. Those are the facts. When we get to where we are today with, getting 1.4 million in CARES funding, and the amount of monies that we have committed to the jail, we're at $800,000. And we're even committing going into the next fiscal year. So the CARES monies, I thought that we've done a very good job of managing, because we've got other departments, and again, it's only 1.4 million, but we've got other departments that we're responsible for. And we've put those monies out. So it just shows that, when we're talking about trying to hit that moving target last year, because that was the debate, what is the potential shortfall that we can be looking at? And nobody knew. There was no way that you could put a thumb on it. But I feel like the court did a good job of finding that target, and that 1.4 that we had to help us with that shortfall. $800,000 of it has been committed to the jail. The biggest question is going into this next fiscal year. We already see operate, and we have to tighten our belts. Wherever we can tighten our belt, the belt's going to be tightened. I mean, it has to be, because we don't want to end up in the same situation next year, where, we've got a bigger hole to climb out of. But
Well, all right. So, and I don't disagree with you about tightening our belts. I mean, I get it, and I hope our community and taxpayers get that too, and I think they do, because they've been impacted by COVID. So we've all, in some manner or form, whether private business or public, have been affected by it. I guess I just feel like, as it relates to our different departments, that this is mostly COVID related, and I'm not saying it's ever, and I get it, our associations tell us that. Roger and I have talked. I mean, I know the jails probably feel like they get beat up by every association conference, but it was mostly COVID related, and I do feel like that's at least in part going to come back. I'm not saying it's going to get back to the 1.9, but I don't think it's going to be 1 million either. I mean, through 10 months invoices from July through April, he was at $1,034,000. So looking at the state inmates and how they've, gone down throughout that time, the minimum amount was still over 100, which, if you multiply that out, is about 1.14 million. Well, no, not inmate wise, but 90s as far as
Gotcha.
receipts coming in. You had 3 months, 3 or 4 months in the 90s, high 90s, low 90 in one. Of course, one of them was February, so it goes by days. But I get lowering that. Don't get me wrong. I just don't know that $1 million is fair.
oh, wait a minute. the $1 million, when we sat down, we asked if this was a collective decision. So when, are you talking about?
You're saying it was
the
collective?
receipts from 1.6 to $1 million?
Yeah.
Yes. That was a meeting where Roger and myself and Erica, we asked, your receipt side, dropping it to $1 million. Are you fine with that? And he said yes. So if you're going to say that it's not fair, then you need to talk to him. We sat down.
Okay.
Statutorily, I have to sit down with him, in which I did. So what you're seeing is what I'm required to do. And we communicated this. We sat down again for the expense side and asked, where can you cut on the expense side? We had these
How many times
discussions.
have we sat down?
We sat down, I want to say twice,
We're at
my office.
one time and one time here.
We talked when we
with-
first saw that the budget was low,
And
but I don't know that we.
No,
talked
I'm
about-
talking about when we sat down to do next year, the budget that we're sitting down to do this right now. The receipts, we sat there and dropped the receipts to $1 million, and you said $1 million.
I agree with you. I do, yeah.
That's what I'm
But
talking
with
about.
with that being said, Judge, now that's been almost 2 months ago, probably has been 2 months ago. So, and through this COVID, I mean, things are changing every day. Do you agree with me? Okay. I think there are some state inmates out there, just in the past couple weeks, we've got our inmates voluntarily, anyone that wanted vaccine, they got vaccinated. I think the same thing throughout the state, through the penitentiaries. I do think that there's probably some inmates out there.
Let's
right now.
just get to the chase. Sorry, Roger, I don't want to interrupt you. You want to raise
I guess what
you
I'm-
want to raise it, let's raise it. Let's, because I mean, when you're looking at this, the receipt side, which was reduced to $1 million, which you agreed to, causes your expense side to be 1.3. I mean, that's $650,000.
I want to throw this out there. Before we meet again, I'd like updated numbers. We're looking at March numbers on things, on receipts, and I'd like to see where we're actually at.
So $650,000 difference. I mean, I'm assuming that's why we're having this discussion. I don't know where it wasn't fair.
There again, fair, do we have to take one word? And so, excuse me for using the word fair. That's not what I mean. I'm just, let me try to think of the best word to use here. Well, let's just get to the 650 then, if that's what you're saying.
I'm just trying to understand. Guys, I'm statutorily required to sit down with this man, and I did that.
Yeah.
And I brought to you a budget that's got receipts reduced from 1.6 to $1 million that he agreed to. That's a difference of $650,000. We knew, we put this in front of this court and said, on the expense side, now we're looking at, that's a 1.3.
And
If we're going to talk about today, and that's what we're talking about here, is the receipts. If you don't think that it needs to be at $1 million, then let's have that discussion.
Okay. At 100 state inmates, and you check me on this, Erica, but at 100 state inmates at $31.30, I'm coming up with 1.142, 950, something like that. I don't know if you,
100 inmates, 31.30 a day. and
Day.
How many days are we saying?
well,
Whole year?
365, yeah.
Okay. So
I mean, it's an average.
of 100?
It's an average.
So the math on that is 1.142.
Yeah. So over the last year, if you take July through current state inmates, the lowest average month was October at 111. There was a February at 112. You know, you've had 115, 119, 120, 130, 133, 127. It's 116 right now. It's never been below 110. And 100 is 1.1. I know it's not a lot of money, but it's $150,000. I mean, that's my thought.
And
On
I
the
think there's
receipts.
some inmates out there to get right now.
Well, and I think again, 100, I feel like, because on 115 or on 114, it's closer to 1.3. So I feel like you're still, at 100, you have a cushion of still another $150 to $200,000 in potential over and above that. So, I mean, the average has been 140 since January of last year, but
Do we have an idea? I know we're still trying to identify what the OTA for this fiscal year.
It's at 4.78 right now. I'm sorry, 5.78. Brad, I showed it to Brad this morning, 5.78, I said 4.
Yeah.
okay.
What is it?
And I think all the quarterlies are in. I mean, it's the 13th. There might be a few stragglers.
It's at 5.78.
5.7.
So we were projecting 5.3 on the high
Yeah, we were
end.
hoping 5.2-ish, 5.3.
When we started talking a few months
Yeah, a
ago or
couple months
something.
ago. So that's,
Or I don't
that's
know why
really
we-
great that we're at 5.7.
Yeah, because we were at 4.7.
Well, budget 4.7.
Well, yeah, no, yeah.
But
So with that is actually good news because that's about $400,000 difference as far as what we were projecting. Do you anticipate any other, they pushed it back for another month?
Well, like I said, it's the
No.
13th. The quarterlies are the bulk of our money.
Yeah.
And I think by now that, like I said, there could be a few stragglers that are still coming through the
Yeah.
mail, but I think what we've got in is in, other than some net profits in the next month or
Right.
so. But some of those could be as little as
net,
$5. Like they're
net
just-
profits
they're all
due
different.
Monday, right?
Yeah, yes, without extension, yeah.
Without an extension, yes. Right. But I mean, I know, like I said, it's not a ton, but I also think that it is, let me get the word, more realistic.
Is
Yet
that,
still conservative.
is that a number that you're
What, the
satisfied
1
on?
The 1.2?
No,
1.15.
the increase in your receipts, it was dropped to $1 million, increase in that.
The 1.5?
No, 1,150,000.
Yeah, yeah. And let me say something, this is, and the money is gone, but to help one line look better, I think I brought this up before. My nurse's salary is coming out of the deputy salary instead of the medical. You know, and maybe it should, maybe it shouldn't, but we've got it under the medical. I mean, if you'll look, I mean, my medical's at, what, $70,000? There's no way that my medical's at $70,000 right now. I've spent more than that, just, you know. So you can pull, you know, nurse's salary out of the employees, which is still too, you know, it's still over, but it certainly helps a bunch.
Because that budgeted expense item was including the nurse.
The way
That
it's
200.
budgeted, yes.
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 But her
mean,
coding, he's saying that he thinks
Which-
her coding is incorrect, and it could
Which,
be. I would
which
check
is
on
fine.
that.
It is, I mean, it has to be. There's no could be. It has to be. There's no way you
Something's
could,
coded off, yeah.
yes. Because her salary alone out of that 60-something would have been in the 40s, 9 months out of the year. So,
That made my medical look really, really good.
yeah,
Her last name's Culprit.
no.
What's her last name? Caraway? Caraway.
And just to be clear, that's in this budget. Your nurse's salary's in this budget.
Yeah, no, I know it's in
Yes.
there,
Okay.
but it should be coming out of my medical.
Yeah, we're talking about it was in this budget and it was in last budget, but it wasn't, it makes the expenses, not the budgeted item, but the expense, it skews it. Even though the numbers are the same, it still skews exactly where it's coming from. And if you are thinking, that's the thing, we're looking at that last time. I know he offline mentioned it to me. Well, it looks like we could save money on medical. And it does look like that because that's the way that it's coded. And that way is actually wrong. If you look at actual numbers of what we've spent based on the way it was supposed to be in there, then it would have been, that number would have looked like $140,000 or so through 9 months versus 60. So when we're looking at trying to save money, I'm thinking, oh shoot, we've only spent 60. So we could cut that back. But that number's not a true reflection. And I think it probably should be in deputy. But if it is, then that's fine. I mean, but then medical needs to be decreased, but deputy salaries would be increased. So it's a net zero.
Roger, the
With that,
extra
Erica, does that change it?
$2 on the inmates, when does that end?
We talked about that roughly. I mean, when does it end?
Yeah.
When the COVID emergency is lifted, which, I mean, the word I'm
Got
getting,
it? What's the question?
probably looking at July 1.
Okay.
I didn't even
It reduces about 150.
But
use that.
Right. And with that, Kevin, if I'm understanding correctly, these classes that we offer, anyone that is participating in these classes, I believe we're supposed to get like $2 more a day for these guys, you know. And, you know, it probably varies, and with that, I mean, we want to offer as many as we possibly can now, that's for sure. And I feel like we probably have been anyway because of the space that we have available to have the classes in the jail. You know, I may have to pick up another little part-time person to help with those classes, you know, because we certainly want as many classes as we can going, you know. Because my understanding is we're going to get $2 per day for the guys that are in these classes also.
Thank you.
And we've not received that you're aware of, Erica, we've not received that refund or whatever you want to call it from the, you know what I'm talking about, the retroactive.
I haven't even gotten any information from DLG or anybody about any of that.
So he's gonna get $2 a day per inmate, state inmate, retroactively from March the 12th, 2020 to today. And then continue to get $2 more
Where's that coming from?
from the state. They passed it in their budget like at 11:59 on that day.
Are those CARES monies?
I don't know where the state took it. I'm just telling you that the state
I think he had like,
approved
3.7
that.
million or something like that.
Do you have a contact or anything for that, Roger, so I could call somebody and ask them if they could give us some kind of official documentation?
It may have come from their CARES funding, I don't know. But I'm just telling you, it was in their budget. They passed it within the budget that last day, and it was
Like I said, it was.
they talked about it at the conference that we were out at. You remember that?
Yeah, I'm just want to make sure where it's coming from. Those CARES monies, after sitting through the presentation last week with these federal dollars,
These are coming from the
There's
state.
a-
They're
But
out.
this is in their budget, correct? The state
Yeah.
budget, it
Yes.
was passed in
That's
the
what they
state
said.
budget.
That's what it's for.
Yes.
I mean, it's
That's
not
what we were
coming to the
told
county
anyway.
For the county to decide what it's done. It's allocated for that purpose.
yes. So the way I'm understanding is that the federal dollars
No.
that were given to the state, or
Well-
were they state dollars and they're allocating it?
It was the state's portion
It was the
of
states, the federal, of the
of
federal monies.
the act
Yeah.
that Congress passed, but it was passed through their budget that'll be given to the counties.
Right.
But again, that's not in any of this. I'm not advocating for using the $2 increase either. But the $2 increase, just based on, I think I based that on the 114 inmates, would be somewhere in the neighborhood of $90,000. So until the emergency order is pulled off the table, that 3130 from the Department of Corrections is going to be 3330, but we're only banking on 3130. So, I mean, I'm not saying it's substantial, but it's $2 a day per inmate, but anyway. And I'm not sure that may be off the table before the budget starts, but it'll still be happening. We're still going to be getting it retroactively. So they may be waiting until the end of the year and sending one check. I don't know what they're doing, but it should be around $100,000, I would think. So, anyway. So you mentioned that, you just brought it up, so I'm gonna,
What's that?
you brought up the federal stuff, and I was on that same call. And I know this is gonna be a disagreement between you and I on this, I'm certain of it.
Oh,
but
we might as well just
I
call
will try
ourselves a socialist USA. Those federal dollars alarm me, yes.
On a federal level, I'm not
Absolutely.
disagreeing with you.
Absolutely.
But as someone on this court, how do we not use that money if
Well,
it
it's not
is?
about, in my opinion, it's not about not using the monies. It's how we use the money.
Okay.
That's what alarms me.
And that one particular section, as we saw in there, and you all can tell me if I'm wrong or not, but lost revenue because of COVID is one of those areas. And so I cannot, and now I know that we have to do it as an entire budget. So we
Right.
cannot, and I get
We
that.
can't pick and choose
We
lines.
cannot pick and choose. So it has to be the only figure that we can put towards this. We would have to do some work to even see what that figure is. But it's still going to be, a decent amount of money. I mean, I cannot imagine it's not going to be $1 million or something in that neighborhood. That's what that ARPA is there for. I mean, if that federal legislation was passed as a way to do infrastructure, but they just made it sound like it's a COVID-related bill, then that's on them. That's on them. But the way that we spend it, I feel like should be used for those COVID-related losses first. And then we look at how to spend the rest of it.
How about we save that discussion for when we get the monies?
Okay, well,
Because at this point right now, these monies are going to hit anytime, and then May of next year.
okay.
And if you remember with the CARES monies, when those monies came out, it changed throughout, the interpretation changed throughout the year. And there were some mistakes, made from higher that was approved, and, so
Agreed.
I think we just need to focus on getting as close as we can with what we have as a balanced budget. And then we can start looking at other areas, but
But as it relates to the comment you just made, you're right about that. It did change, but what was consistent is that piece of it
well, let me just say this.
that we used
Let me
to
just
take
say
up
this.
for.
At some point, the likelihood that the federal government's going to go after those dollars, just because they're being given out to the states and the county governments and the municipalities, the fact that, a year from now, whatever, they can go after those dollars if they're misappropriated. The U.S. Treasury is the one that sets the guidelines. And we're talking about our states already, their interpretation was off, and it has changed. For me, yeah, that does scare me. Because we're printing monies and they're giving it out to the states and the communities. And there is a regulatory arm there that says, wait a minute, this is how these dollars are to be spent. And if we get so focused in our shortfalls and we just put our hand out and grab these monies without doing our due diligence, not only ourselves, but the taxpayers in this community are the ones who are going to be holding the bag. And that's why I say the cart is so far out in front of the horse on this. We really need to, and I think we can, tighten our belt. We've got a lot of areas where we can tighten the belt
Okay. Well,
before we start talking about, these other dollars that are out there. That's just
Okay.
my opinion.
well, I don't disagree with you. It just came out. I get that. I get that. I'm just throwing that on the table so that you know my thoughts in the last few days on that and doing my own research. So we can all have a
Well, that's
side.
that's my opinion based off of sitting down not only with the auditors, but also just the principle of how government is supposed to work and how those dollars would be sent out. Yes, anybody that sat through that presentation, those dollars are being sent out as a form of helping our communities. But when you look at what government is supposed to do, to me, there's a big difference. And I got a problem with that. But that's my personal opinion, but it is consistent with
And
some of the auditors I speak to.
I get that. And if we are, if we have a department that is spending more than they should, I get it. But if you're spending the same, if not a little bit less, but your revenue is cut by $900,000, that's a different, and I think the jail is a different beast to me than some of the other departments.
Well, it's a statewide issue with the jail. I want anybody watching to understand this. It's not just us. It's the meetings we went to, everybody we talked to feeling the same pain. They're feeling the same pain for the inmates not being able to get out and clean up the roadways. We see now, some things we take for granted. That didn't just happen magically. So there's a lot involved in this that, people don't realize, but it is a statewide issue with the jails.
And it has been a statewide issue. The pandemic has just
Some-
ripped the scab off.
Some
I mean,
counties
this,
more than others, yeah.
yes.
Judge, I don't understand, though. I mean, now, I can do a lot of cuts, but in order to do cuts, I'm gonna have to eliminate inmates. So the only inmates that I can eliminate would be state inmates.
And that's where I think you updating the court and the community as far as the state inmates, explaining to the community how the state inmates get in our jail. I mean, I think that's a big educational piece that the people in our community, they don't know. They have no clue.
I'll be glad to. You just tell me, you want me here on the first Tuesday, the second, the third Tuesday?
But
And if you've got something in mind that you want me to deliver, let me know all the information you want, I'll be glad to. If it's just the number of state
pull
inmates
up,
versus county versus where I get them from.
KRS 441. I don't know if it's 206 or 207, but it outlines, and I think that information is good. It talks about, and those, we can start with the statutory language as far as the jail is concerned, because I don't think the average person understands.
Most people don't even know how many inmates we have. They don't know
No.
how big the bed is, how big the jail is.
And I think it's important that, when we talk about state inmates, because somebody at home can be asking a question, well, why do we have state inmates in our jail? And we're Marshall County residents, taxpayers, are flipping the bill for a state inmate. And I think it's a valid question, and I think it deserves a valid explanation. Go ahead.
I just have questions for Roger. Is there a requirement for us to take state inmates? I know we do because we make money off them, where as a county inmate, we do not. But I know when I was kind of searching into some of this, when Judge was asking me questions, that $30 a day is based off of some calculations they did in the 80s, and they haven't redone them. So are we really, at $30 a day,
Actually,
are we
I think
covering them or not?
Actually, I think the last raise we got was probably 12 years, 12, 13 years ago.
Okay, so it has been done since I looked it up.
Well, Yeah, I think that the 32, 31, some change, I think that's probably covered.
Okay. Well, I mean, I don't know.
Are we
It's
making
hard
a
for
ton
me
of
to
money
do.
off of them? No, we're not making a ton of money off of them, but we get their services also
You get their services?
for the community.
Cleaning up the roadways and stuff like that.
You know, and I mean, that's how much an inmate costs is really, really, really a hard number.
Right, because you have to think about overhead and, yeah. That's why I think, okay, are we at $30 a day, are we really making money when we consider all the overhead? And of course, you have a jail that's aging and you have things inside of it that are aging and. So
But there
are
is
we
a
making money off of that?
cost, though, regardless.
Yeah.
Right.
So the state inmate, to me, is the only way
Is
that
there,
it makes,
is there a higher cost though with any state inmates? Like, on average, do you see that cost us more in medical? Do you
Actually,
see-
money,
what do
it's
you
federal
see
inmates,
Kind of the trend there.
not state inmates.
what do you mean?
State
If you're gonna
inmate-
make money,
Versus like a county inmate.
Oh, I think.
federal inmates, because the per diem is higher, the state
About the
inmates,
same.
they don't pay. The jails are failing because, and you got jails across the state that are taking in state inmates, and they're failing. The only successful jails, and I forget who it was that mentioned it earlier, but in the week, but is the federal inmates. But the jails are not made, and this is the big, this is the big question or issue. The jails are not designed to make money.
No.
They're not designed to make
No,
money.
They're
And the
designed to
state
house criminals.
trying to chase state dollars is not going to solve. That's why I say the jail reform has been an issue in Frankfurt long before COVID.
Yeah, it was there
COVID,
10 years ago. We had a
COVID
big
is
release
just-
10 years ago. I dropped down to 125 inmates.
yes,
But guess what? Before COVID, I was up to almost 300 inmates.
yeah.
Almost 100 overpopulation.
The issue is becoming more identifiable because of COVID.
Judge, there was, a few years ago, there was discussion about the state taking over the jails, and possibly doing regional jails. Well, of course, unfortunately, state paid millions of dollars to do this study, and they can't afford it. But number two, if they could afford it, guess who's gonna pay for it? The counties are gonna pay for it, because you're not gonna house your inmates at $30 a day. They're gonna charge you 50, 60 or more to house your inmates.
Well, I mean, that definitely has been a debate. At the end of the day, though, when it comes to county jails, the only ones that make money is from the federal inmates. And that can change. I mean, it's,
There's a lot to federal.
and when you look across the state, you get out in eastern Kentucky, there's counties that don't have jails, a lot of counties that don't have jails.
There's a lot right here.
But
And there's a few down here.
they still have expenses
Yeah.
related
Yes.
to the
Yeah,
we've got-
in
inmate.
some
We've got roughly
cases,
70.
I was talking with a judge this week, that tried to, and even got the court to agree, because they saw the impact to their budget to increase property taxes. They voted to do that. It was over the 4%. The locals, the taxpayers petitioned against it. And, there they are. I mean, it's a lose-lose situation. If you try to go to the legislation and get some type of legislation that helps, good luck. And then when you got a court like the one judge I was talking to, where the fiscal court took the initiative to put, a measure on the table, in which they did, the taxpayers said no. I mean, so it is a big issue in this state. But
So So the county, the county to county deal is, am I right, it's $26. Is that, okay. So let's just
How's
think
that
about
determined?
this.
And now, pardon me?
How's that determined, the
It's
county to
just
county?
determined by each county.
So it's 26 a day?
I'm there just to stay competitive. I don't like it there, but I stay there to be competitive.
So 26 a day for regardless how many days, and what about any medical costs? Is that
They-
covered by the,
They cover all that.
It's $26. So if you take that 26, let's just assume we didn't have a jail. We had to have a jailer. So you got that. But if you assume that $26 is the contract that you have with whatever other county that is, I mean, based on the numbers of county that we have, I'm thinking our subsidy is going to be 600,000, 500 to 600,000 with no revenue coming in, I assume. I don't know what revenue you'd be bringing in if you didn't have a jail. So to me, and I've not even tried to look at if we didn't have one, but if I'm just doing those numbers quick right here, I think, to me, what we've done in the past as far as an OTA commitment, subsidy, whatever we want to call it, is better than what it probably would be if we didn't have a jail. That 400,000 would probably be a deal for us.
The judge that I was talking to alluded to the fact of what they went through, that their fiscal court went through. And they had all these discussions. It was costing them more if they didn't have a jail. You got transportation costs. His county was relatively smaller than the size of our county. Finding a jail that will take the inmates. I mean, the expenses, it's a lose-lose situation. And that's why, and I think I've been this way with anybody since I've been here is the management piece. I mean, we have to make sure that the counties have to make sure that they hit the mark every time. I mean, that's the best way I can explain it. There is no room for error when we know that these are the issues. I know that your association for years have been trying to get the General Assembly to do something. I remember before COVID, the leadership, Stiver sitting there talking about jail reform. And at the time, if we really want to dig into this, $400,000 subsidy is what we were subsidizing the jail. Because I stood up and I commented to Stivers. The biggest, and I've had Danny and I've had Chris up here in my office. The biggest subsidy that we can immediately have an impact on was the 911 subsidy. And we did that. We took the initiative to get that subsidy off of our budget. It frees up those dollars by putting that fair fee in place that everybody in this community should pay for that service.
Our per diem was going up, like I said, it's been 12, 15 years probably. Because once upon a time, I did not cost the county as much money, and at times zero. But if our per diem, which is none of our control, there again, it's the state, but if our per diem would go up like it should, then naturally that would be coming down also, and try to be staying about the same spot, hopefully, but.
When we talk about having an impact on our what accounts we're subsidizing, I mean there's no magic bullet here for the jail. This has been a discussion for years on both ends on how you look at it. And in a local community, I don't think can dig their way out of this issue with the jail reform by itself. Because, like I said, when you look at the mandates the statutory mandates that the county has, this fiscal court has, it puts us in a position to really disadvantage unfunded mandates to some degree that come down. But just taking a look at all the agencies involved in putting folks in our county jail, but who has the purse? That ultimately we do. I mean, obviously you got some monies that you can get for revenue, but really it's us. It's the fiscal court, the taxpayers, and it's when we go through looking through this budget. And again, I'll beat this drum. 911 is the same thing. That subsidy that we're paying back when it was $400,000, 911 subsidy was greater than the jail subsidy. And the courts in our state, all the way back from when I had Dale Edmondson here from Campbell County, those counties that had tried to find a solution, same thing. Back in 2013, they started their initiative. They were sued to the state Supreme Court. And in 2015, the state Supreme Court ruled in favor of the counties, and it just continued on. The funding mechanism was flawed from 1992 when that was put in place. The language was there. The courts interpreted the law favorable for the counties. The one thing that we could do as a court is what we did, to take those monies, that subsidy, and get it off our budget. And what I mean by off our budget, put a funding mechanism that is in place that is fair long-term. The biggest issue that the 1992 statute faced was they didn't see this thing coming. They had no idea that this was going to come and disrupt the funding mechanism. And that would have helped us tremendously if we would have had that subsidy freed up on our budget to give us some breathing room, because that OTA account keeps getting whittled away with expenses, and we've had Gerdau shut down, CCMA shut down, COVID hits, and then it puts communities into a situation where we are now, where we have to make decisions and try to make the best decisions with the numbers that we have. So as I've listened and I've pinned, I'm looking at 1.170. Is that correct?
Okay.
So let's keep
So
moving.
then, okay. So again, I've tried to get a better handle on this because I'm not a jailer. But so I called to the two counties close to us, which are both relatively population-wise the same, which is Graves and Callaway. McCracken, I don't think we can really, it's fair to compare ourselves to those two. But inmate-wise, both Callaway and Graves are both smaller bed facilities than us. I think Callaway next year, or in this particular budget, and I don't know if they're finished yet, obviously, but the DLG budget the budget they sent to DLG looks like it's about a $1.2 million loss, and Graves is $1.7 million. So relatively, if we're trying to look at what is the number that's fair, I mean, both of those jails have around 40 FTE. We're probably closer to the 28 to 30 full-time employees. So I've, and that's not I don't know that that's perfect. I'm getting those numbers from those folks over there. But both Callaway and Graves are in that 70% range as far as salaries to total expenses. My figure, if I'm including the nurse in that, and which they may not be, because I feel like it's obviously in their expenses. They do that a different way. So I think the fair way is to not include her. If we don't include her, that's like 71%, 71.5. If we do, I'm coming up with 76%. I've heard the 80-something mentioned in the past, but it's 1.88, almost 1.9 of 2.48 million. So
We've got the
guess-
nurse in this budget.
I know we do. I know. I'm counting her in that FTE. I'm counting her in that FTE and just trying to make okay, are we out of line with this, say 1.15 figure for this next budget based on similarly, yeah, whatever it is, sized facilities close to us. And it made me feel, I don't want us to lose $1.1 million. Don't get me wrong. I mean, that is a concern, but it certainly is not I'd like to see where we get that. There's no way to cut $1 million out of this budget and have a jail.
Let's talk about the 1.170 as a budget as a whole.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, the jail. If it's not going to come out of the jail, where's it coming from?
I've already told you, but y'all, you don't agree with me. We don't want to talk about that for another month. But I mean, in my opinion, well, number one, we've already committed 400 to that. That 1.1 is not. So we've committed the CARES funding to that. So it's 700. First thing. Two, that CARES money is straight up CARES money. So you all put that in there in that. And that's fine. And that I agree. I totally agree with that. But our subsidy in the past has averaged somewhere close to 400. So I think it would be fair to say that it's not 700, it's 300 and something. I get that 400 of that is federal money that we're not potentially going to get years in the future. I get that, and we'll have to. But I also feel like this is not this is what it's going to be forever. We can disagree about that. I'm sure we will, but I don't think that this revenue stream is what this revenue stream is going to be from here to eternity.
Okay.
All right.
So if you take the 700,000 and you apply the 400,000, do we have that? We don't have that in this budget, do we?
No, we don't.
So
we
we
didn't
apply
have
the
anything.
400,000.
We
That
had
leaves-
all of it coming out of OTA. I'm sure.
That leaves 300,000,
Okay.
roughly.
Well,
Y'all back up. You want me to put in, just so that I'm looking at this, 400,000 as the CARES carryover. I'm sorry, or,
whoa.
into there, not 4 million. Ah. There we go. And then make the, state prisoners 1.15,
Yeah.
so then our subsidy is gonna go down
Wait a minute. Yeah, 1.15.
to 770. Right? That's what you're telling me? You wanna look at it like this?
Yeah, that should be
Okay.
right.
Yes. Yes. But then the other thing is, okay, and can we just agree on this? Hang with me here. If we have consistently, let's just take last year's, what we budgeted to come out of OTA and subtract that from the 770,055. And that is,
$5 million, or 4.7?
no. Well, I'm just saying, last year, we budgeted to give the jail already. We subsidized them 385, 455.
But the subsidy came out of the OTA, so what
Right.
I'm asking is, the budget is 5.0. You're talking about keeping the OTA at 5.0.
Well, I mean, we're not there yet, but if we keep it at 5.0, I mean, I don't think we,
I mean, that's what
Okay.
I'm saying, that's where it's at.
yeah.
So if we keep it at 5.0, and correct me if I'm wrong, that's the subsidy, or the OTA we have as far as receipts at 5 million, correct?
In this budget.
Right, it currently sits at five on the dot.
Right. But
But I think
I don't think I'm getting this across.
What you were asking
correctly,
is,
but-
if we make that change, the difference between what the subsidy looks like right now versus what it was last year?
Yes.
Is 384,000.
Okay.
So last year was 384.
Well, it's
Last year it was
385.
385. Now it's,
385.
right now, as it said, 770, so that difference is about 385. So basically, we've doubled it.
And that's 685.
Sorry, say that one more time.
Was that 685 total?
I don't know
It
what
was
you-
385 last year, 770 right now. Difference is 385.
What else on the, anything else?
I mean, in my opinion, the food section, I mean, you have less inmates, you have less food. I mean, you know, we're at 300,000, right? Budgeted. I mean, I don't know that you can,
Is that this current year's
well, this,
numbers?
Yes, it's the same.
Roger, you said.
which is what you kept, what we kept in that particular. So if you kept it constant, I mean, when we had, as you can tell, when we had 270, we hit that 300, but we don't have 270, and we're not going to have 270 between now and the end of next year. I don't know that you can cut it down to 200, but 225, 250, what, is there a number?
At 331, you were at 164, 260. Yeah, give me a second and I'll go through the.
So 9 months. So 18.3 times that's 220. If you took the average, I mean, it'd extrapolate out to 220. You're on the wrong line, I guess. You're no,
Probably extremely low this year. I mean, I think we was down 150s,
yeah.
And, I mean, that's another issue, if we're No, we're not gonna be too sad, I hope we're never too sad. With the increase of inmates, I mean, it is gonna go up some. Probably, honestly, you know, also when these guys are able to go out and work, of course, we've got 84 beds in our restricted custody building, and probably, you know, 40, 45 of them we probably have jobs for. You know, they actually take sack lunches during the day too, so, I mean, that's certainly cheaper than feeding in jail.
Here you are, where you're at right now on food is, 206. 206, 118. And that's with checks that have been written, so anything else that you have in like purchase order stage, it's not on this list.
So 240-ish is what it's gonna end up being, all right? Is that what you're saying? 250? Well,
Wait, when is that the population is that right now?
what, in a month? Is that what you said? It's gotta be closer to 20.
You just agree.
I know you agree, but it's not right.
Maybe I was
$200,000
looking
over
at
10 months is
A
$20,000.
low month.
So that must be just a half a,
Yeah, I think we were looking at half.
yeah, you're just looking at a half month.
Probably 17 to 20.
Yes. So can we do 250?
I guess I've got another question, Jack. We're wanting to cut the deputy salaries, but, you know, of course, I know that COVID certainly didn't help with my salaries this year, but, I mean,
Wait a minute. This budget doesn't have any cuts to your deputy salaries. Yeah, and I'm gonna make it clear, and we talked about this, that was a balanced budget to go to DLG. 21 days is gonna die on the table. This budget does not have any cuts to the nurse or to the jailers.
but that's what I'm talking about, Judge. But I've overspent on deputies this year, correct?
I don't think that you have at this point. Heather's not coded correctly in there, so I will get all that for you by the end of the day.
Yeah.
I'll fix Heather by the end of the day.
Anything else?
I move for a quick recess.
I think this is balanced as of today. Right? The jail?
The jail section, yep. Unless y'all are wanting to make any more changes on it.
I do encourage you and even the public look at jails that are similar to my size and check their budgets and how many people is employed there and so on and so forth, I believe you'll see that, I believe we do as efficient a job as we possibly can. I've been around a long time, and up until COVID, really never been any complaints, and I agree with you, Judge, the subsidy goes up a little bit every year, but, you know, I think a lot of that falls back on something that's out of our control, and that's the state with the per diem per inmates, you know.
I have a question, just a question, because we talked earlier about full-time and that with the overtime that you've had, you could hire 2 full-time people. If you were to do that, then that would cut out all overtime? There would be none needed?
Yeah, I mean, probably still, you know, on vacations and stuff like that, I mean, I think that we would possibly still have to have a little bit.
I'm not, I asked that because I don't know how it runs. Like, do you have three
No,
8-hour shifts and you man a
I
certain
think
number
if I
of
could
guys,
cover,
or?
if I could cover the 2 that I've got that just left, plus the 2, yeah, I think that the biggest majority of overtime will be over with. I mean, like I said, I mean, you know, when it comes vacation time, it's possible that we might have a little bit. I mean, honestly, and I certainly, I mean, don't want to do it for budget-wise, but I mean, we could have a staff analysis done. Department of Corrections comes down to staff analysis, but our problem then, if they tell me, I mean, they may tell me I got too many employees and take them away, or they might tell me that I need 10 more, you know, and that doesn't necessarily mean you have to hire them, but certainly will throw some liability if something ever happens.
Can we,
Hitting, you know.
I'm sorry, I thought you were done. Can we get a copy of the employee handbook that you have? Does that have the additional information in it that's outside of your policy?
Yes. I guess with asking this, I mean, is the on-call pay still in this coming up budget then?
It's in that salary roundup. I thought. Can you put it back up there?
Yeah, it takes a second to get it
Oh.
passed back.
Yep.
Okay, so then here's all the,
It's in there.
so it's probably, you don't have it out of the line, so it must be in this with the other deputy
It is.
salaries.
Yeah, and
Then let's look
I think
here.
that it
It's
is.
the third line, or third column, says on-call pay. And then the fourth column, which is what you use for the 74.9, or 749.3, has total salary and. Are you
talking about the salary schedule?
Salary roundup, yeah, or whatever you call it. Look at deputies, yeah, see what I'm saying?
There it is, right there.
Yep. Yeah, but I'm saying that 749.3 comes from total salary and on-call.
Right.
So yes, it's in there.
Yeah, Roger.
Thank you, Roger.
Thanks, Roger.
Appreciate you, Roger.
All right, where do we want to start?
I start by saying, good morning, guys.
Good
Good morning.
Morning.
The sheriff is out of town, so he's asked me and Tim to come over and try to help with the workshop. Judge, when you were policing, did you ever go to court and testify on somebody else's case?
Yes,
You're not familiar with- That's how I feel today.
that's how you feel?
I have
Yeah.
no idea on a whole lot of these numbers, and I don't know them will be much help, but maybe I can relay some information back and forth. He did say we could call or Zoom, FaceTime, whatever. If you have any questions about it, Tim over here is probably more familiar with it than I am, so.
I've tried to do as much studying on it as I can. I've never really been extremely involved in the ins and outs of all the budget. But from what I can see from talking to him and looking through it, the most increase that we're asking for basically will be deputy salary. Leaving the fees the same, and just for information, kind of catch up where we're at with fees right now. The bills that we've already sent to school, then the next bill that we send to school, without any other fees coming in, puts us at 189. So we're above, 18 is where we have our fees set at. So we have our fees above, and that was even with the year. Obviously, courts were down for a while, so we weren't serving as many civil papers. Clerk's office was down. We weren't inspecting as many cars. Even COVID year that reduced some of those things, we still definitely went above our fees. So fees are still where we set it at 1.8 again for next year. So we don't view any anticipation of there being issues meeting the fees.
Okay, so let me ask again. Okay, so that was going to be one of my questions. So 1.89, right, as of, that's including another bill that will be going to the school, right?
Two more
Okay,
bills. Yeah.
two
We've
more.
already
So
set-
that would take us through the end of this budget year.
Correct.
They would not, so that 1.89 is what it's gonna be.
That's outside still any civil papers we serve, any vehicle inspections, some other fees. That we
Here and
have
there.
coming in, so.
Yeah. Could be 1.9, but yeah, or somewhere down there. Okay.
On that note, I know the sheriff said he went ahead and budgeted for 2022, also, the 1.8 on receipts. And we certainly expect that to be more like the 1.9 next year when it's even better than it was this year.
Okay. Do you have more recent ABC? Or is that something, is that you or him? I don't know what, I still can't.
They collect the money and put it into QuickBooks, but I have not updated that since 3/31. But I will update it when I
Oh.
update everything else, like Commissioner Sprague's asked for.
Okay. Has it been relatively the same? I mean, well, no, it can't be. There's no way.
Well, so if you look at last year's actuals, we were 319 across the two types of fees, so it's 320. And we were already at 305 in March, so I'm gonna say it's gonna be a little over what maybe it was last year.
Well, what's the figure that, I have to find it somewhere, but I'm thinking that Eddie usually uses something different than this, I believe, on like I can't remember what he says, 480, something like that. Does that sound right?
For ABC,
Yeah, or no,
425 is where it was at, I believe, last year.
425.
ABC funds estimated at 425 for the 2022.
Oh, okay. That was last year's budget. It was
I
428.5.
believe he said he was keeping that the same as it was, so no change there.
But I can't figure, I know you're doing this different.
Okay, so when you look at the receipt side here, for ABC, as far as what's coming in, the black, it's the same as last year, other than the cash balance, I'm gonna assume is gonna be gone, because I think he's gonna use it. He may not, and if he doesn't, then it'll end up right there. But so see last year how the total receipts were 428.5, and when you look at the appropriation side for ABC, it's budgeted out at 428.5. And that's because, other than the small things that come out, 9,000 of my salary is paid out of there. So I'll have a retirement match for that, and then they have some bonds, and say they keep some money for refunds. The rest of it went in, as far as the expense side, what to spend that on, went to, it says road deputy salaries, but they're not, that wasn't assigned to specific road deputies, if that makes sense, or specific salaries. It was just there, and when he's asked me for it this year, I just transfer it over into his regular budget, and he spends it on however he wants. And the transfer comes out of this line. So how it's set it right now is, so still the same receipts in, but instead of this being 425, for him to spend 425 over here, go to the bottom, 428, I'm sorry. I don't have that in as an expense side. I have it going, transferring out and going directly into the sheriff's fund. And that means that, so when you boil that down to a nutshell, what that difference is that that's meaning that he has to spend ABC on what he's got in his sheriff's budget. So if I did not do that, let's say I did not do that, and I left it like it was last year, and his budget's 316 there, and I tell him again, he can spend the difference here, make the budgets match, would be what, 3031. I told him he could spend all of that the same way he did this year, whatever he wants. ABC now looks the same as it did last year, relatively. The difference is because of the beginning balance. The sheriff's fund no longer balances. So I'd have to give him more of a subsidy for him to cover his sheriff's fund. So in reality, I mean, I'll present it whichever way you want. Either he can take his ABC and spend it on whatever he wants, or we can force him to cover his sheriff's fund expenses with it. I'll do whatever you guys tell me to do. If we do it this way, though, I just showed you the subsidy goes up because it's basically giving him letting him do whatever he wants with the ABC money instead of forcing it on salaries, current salaries. So I've left it, so you just saw me change it all. So if you wanted me to do it that way and leave ABC the way it's traditionally been.
So really, the 425 is 425 because of a cash balance of $130,000. That's not going to be there anymore. So it really wasn't. I mean, it's really the same budgeted receipts. It's just that the cash balance is essentially gone or close to gone, right? That's the difference between the 425 and the 303 is cash balance. It's not receipts.
Yes, when you're looking at the ABC fund, the difference between the 425 and the 316
Yeah.
is entirely the cash balance, beginning balance.
He had 376 is what he had scheduled in the budget last year. From what I can see, that was supposed to be using towards salaries.
Let's see, 415.
I don't actually have the breakdown that you guys have. I don't guess he shared that with us. What I have is
415.5 is what was in the budget to be spent on salaries last year. Because that's after taking out the portion that covers mine, which altogether is 12,000, and then your bonds and your refunds, which is 1,000.
Did he just lump that into deputy salary?
I have no clue what he did with what he's been keeping up with. I can just know what our budget looks like. But as far as whether he's lumped it in or not, I don't know. But when you look at this budget, so I've just changed it to match the way it was last year. So when you look at this and you look at these salary lines, excuse me, all these salary lines, it's all the way down to, let's say around here. This represents everybody right now who works in the sheriff's office, everybody. So if you also, and it covers all of their salaries. So if you look down here to the ABC fund and you see 303 that can go towards road deputy salaries, they're already all covered in, so that's additional salary money he can spend. Does that make sense? Because they're all already covered in the sheriff's budget. And so the reason I had it changed the way I had it before, I just changed it in front of you, was to make this ABC fund money cover those salaries.
His original intention last year is he actually had specific officers to be covered. I don't know what happened. with it,
Right.
but
So in
from
years
my
past-
understanding was his original intention was he had actual deputies to be covered by ABC salary. So everybody wasn't covered underneath the overall. Some of the salaries came from ABC.
Yeah.
So in
How
years
that broke
past, we
down
had
differently.
some deputies coded to ABC, and they would be for a certain portion of the year, and then we'd get to it in the a part of the year, and it didn't balance out anymore, so they needed to be rebudgeted. Their coding needed to be changed back to be covered by the sheriff's deputy's office lines, and we cannot do that anymore with the new system. Like, we can't be changing codes mid-year. There's too much automation of the matching part of that into coding accounts that when we start messing with that, it messes up the automation. And so we just can't do that anymore. We can't change coding mid-year. So they're gonna all need to be same place, and they're gonna have to stay there all year. And so this was the fix, in my eyes, the fix for that.
So Eric, are you saying it would be best then just for that ABC money to automatically be allocated to salaries, just across the board and not specific?
Right, that would be the easiest thing. And when I've talked to other treasurers, they do that. ABC money, they take it all and put it towards salaries. And it's easily justifiable because every deputy deals with some kind of alcohol-related.
So statutorily,
We
it
just
is
have to cover
not-
alcohol-related
Okay.
expenses.
I don't know why I was thinking it was salaries only.
And the ones I've spoken to, they've said that if they've ever been questioned, they've never had a problem. They just show their overall salaries, and they're always clearly more than what they bring in alcohol beverage tax. So I don't know what direction you guys want me to go, whether the way I had it before or the current way. I know that if we do it the way I had it before, it's gonna be a change to Eddie. It's gonna be a different,
Yeah.
something different.
I don't
And-
see
and-
why
and
that would
less,
be.
and when you look at it, the big picture, less money as far as he won't be able to do whatever he wants with the ABC money.
I would say for now, switch it back to the way that you were planning on doing that. and-
Okay.
And it goes to pay those salaries, I would.
Yeah, I mean,
think, I mean,
ABC
in the
money
end-
right now, whenever we appropriated, it went into the salary line.
Right,
I
and
mean,
it's
we're
not that he
using
doesn't use it for
ABC.
salaries now, it's just that salaries now, everybody's covered at regular time. So think about that. So everybody's in there at regular time, at what we think they're gonna work. So if he's working people overtime or whatever, they weren't covered in that initial budget, because those calculations are based on somebody working a normal schedule. So I'm sure, and these are going in and going towards salaries, I'm sure it's helping cover overtime and helping cover some of that kind of stuff. So it's not that it's not salaries, it's just, we're not forcing him into a block that, okay, you're budgeted for everybody to work normal hours, and you only can spend 40,000 on overtime. And that's kind of what it looks like right now. He's forced into a block to only be able to spend a certain amount of overtime.
Okay.
Just for transparency. I don't want you to come back later and ask me why it looks this way.
Okay, so, because I don't have the formula built to be able to do this, and and the budget that was sent to DLG, again, I know we needed to get it there. So it's not taking this year's, or last year's budget, it was using the year before that. So can you tell me, could you tell me what budgeted last year with COLA? Or is that's something you'd have to get back to me?
Last year's budget was a bulk number, so I mean, I can't tell you anything. We gave him a bulk number, and he could have given his people raises if he wanted to. I wouldn't be able to break down anything. I mean, I think he has kept some broken down records on how he ended up using his bulk sum number, but, as far as any details, I don't know that'd be a question for them. But that's a good thing about us going back to a line by line, is that in the future, I think line by line's easier for us to do these analytic conversations.
I mean, if it would help, and I made copies to share, what he provided to us was a 2021 budget, 2022 proposed budget line items. I understand that whatever happened last year was just one lump sum, but we still kept it broke down, just like we did the year before, internally. So that's what Matt and I have, is that looking at where those lines are, of how they're broken down. Now, I don't have, if what you've submitted to DLG was actually 2020 budget, I don't have that in front of me, I'm sorry. So I don't know where we compare with that one. I just know where we compare with what was approved for last year, the 2021 budget, how we are compared to it.
I was going to say, I think when we sat down with Eddie, we used this budget.
As far as the budget that got the first reading, it was back to 21 budget.
Yeah.
That's how we figured it out.
21 budget?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That was what was read. Yep. Mm-hmm. Let me,
All the, because the SRO was not.
I'm talking about when we sat down, when
No,
I
you're
sit
not talking
down,
about the
when
one
I
that
sit
was
down
sent
with
to DLG.
everybody, we went back because of the bulk number. We broke out the previous year. If I remember correctly, we broke out the previous year. And we went through it.
19, not 2021, but 1920, yeah. Yeah.
so what was read, if that's what your
But
question
now,
was?
what was read may have been,
What your question was, what was read? It was 3,119,926, and that's what the budget was for 21. So it's the same budget.
For 2021 was what?
what you should have in front of you is what we sat down with Eddie on. What, again, DLG budget is confusing a lot of people.
Eric, I'm sorry, so what was, for 2021, you had how much?
$3,119,926. 3,119,926.
And of that 3.1, does that include the ABC money?
Nope,
Okay, so that's, okay.
not
so-
including ABC money.
I-
That's just the sheriff's fund.
Okay.
I see what it is. So that was listing, from what I'm seeing on this, it was about 403,000 of ABC money that he was planning to use, because overall budget that he had broken down was 3.5.
Right. So if
So
he's,
that's-
if his budget says 3.5, then that means he intends to use the ABC money, like,
Salary.
not how I have it put back to, but how we talked about just a second ago, like last year, as an ABC expense line, not going into the sheriff's fund.
So which way are you saying is better, to use it?
That's not a decision I make, because that changes his, so in the 3.5 he's showing you, it's his budget. That's his whole sheriff's fund that we have set to give him, plus the ABC fund. So if the way I have it right now is this 3.1, I'm saying he has to cover a portion of that 3.1 with his ABC. So that takes his overall budget down to 3.1. So it's less money. No, I mean, whether they want to do it that way or not, that's up to them. That's just how I have it presented.
From the money that it looks like he's showing here, ABC included, I believe that's ABC funds transfer actually says 425 is what he has listed on here.
I think that Eddie forgets that part of my salary comes out of there when he's doing those calculations. I think that's why that we're a little off.
It looks like there's about $284,000 roughly increase of what he's asking for from last year, from the breakdown. This is everything he shared with us. Like I said, we don't have the one sheet you guys have. That's the kind of the breakdown right there, then just some other sheets. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is kind of what we're looking at, I'm sorry, our sheets didn't actually match what we shared with you guys, so we're trying to correlate together, I guess. So basically, overall, the back page, the back sheet of that, or the back side of that back page shows the difference. And that's why he's asking from 2021 to 2020, the difference is some lines are decreased, some lines are increased. Retirement obviously is going up this year. Is it increased of a little over 100,000 just retirement without even pay raise increase. Overall, the lease line, he had to increase the lease line a little bit because of miscalculation, I guess, on it. So he's increased it a little bit. And then his biggest increase that he's asking for is deputy salary, to actually increase on deputy salary, just to trying to give a competitive, will still be the lowest paid in the county, definitely, but making a more of a competitive rate. So, and that's from what I understand of his increase that he's asking this year, is our understanding of that increase. Some of the ins and outs, I'm sorry, we don't know some of the ins and outs of where they're at, but that's from what our understanding of the difference of what he's asking extra for.
So where did the 95 go for the clerks?
What he did, if you see on basically the second line there, 2021 was $1.3 million. 2022 is $2.1 million. Because if you look at all the sides, he just put them together into one number.
Okay, so the 81 and the 95 is included in the 2.1.
Yeah, and actually, if you go down even
Gotcha.
further there.
SROs, OT, all that.
Yes, everything
Okay.
with parentheses down to that point right there is all included into that. It looks like it's $1 million increase, but it's not. It's not.
I see that combined difference, 90, 550. Okay, gotcha, that's okay. Because if you look at it from that standpoint, you're
Oh,
like,
yes, I know.
yeah.
Which is kind of what we were both at,
Yes.
like, wait, what?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
then we
yeah.
had to, we broke down the numbers
Yeah.
and started seeing,
Okay.
so, the difference.
Did you guys see that?
Yes.
Okay.
But what you already calculated that?
On the right where it says combined difference, so like all those numbers basically got moved into where they were
Yeah.
decreased into that 2.1. So that 90,550 on the very right-hand side, where it says combined difference. On that
First page?
front page, yep, first
Front
page.
page.
All the way to
Top
your
right.
right, there's a combined difference column.
I might have had yours out of order.
Oh.
Yeah. There you go. You see it now? So that's the increase. It's not like he's taken 1 million and then adding an additional 1.1 million on salaries. It's
Okay.
only a 90,055. I mean,
90,500.
yeah.
Like his salary increases by statutory, requirement. His salary increase, the training incentive increase a little bit, stuff like that. It's roughly about 75,000 or so is what he's asking increase to be divvied out in the actual deputy salaries. That will increase, the retirement is going up no matter what. That will increase that slightly. That will increase FICA slightly by giving raises. But some of this will increase just because that's, like the retirement will increase just because that's required this year.
Yeah, he's estimated that to be 127,000 increase on that. So that is a big chunk of the difference.
I mean, obviously when you're base pay goes up, all those go up incrementally, so.
Those are going up, even, if deputies stay the same, everybody stays the same, that's still going up this year, unfortunately.
And I know he did discuss the health insurance. I think he budgets for like family, like the highest paid premium. I don't know what the actual expense is, but I think that's what he said. He budgets everybody as they take the highest plan or whatever. So, yeah, the family plan.
Okay, so this printout is different than what's in the budget. So it's different than what he originally presented to me. So if you want me to sit for a few seconds and update it and tell you how that would change the subsidy, I can. But it's not what's in there because I put in there what he had asked me for originally. And so I'm thinking that this is not what he asked me for originally. So if you want to give me, let's say 10-ish minutes, I'll update it and we can look at how it looks different if you want to.
Do you have so how, he presented to you in a different breakdown than this, obviously?
It looks different now, whether it was a miscommunication or he presented it differently, I don't know, but, I'll,
I think this is just for our ease of seeing, breaking down our line items, but I don't, like I said, we didn't actually get what you had on the board earlier. We don't have that sheet, so I'm sorry.
I mean,
it's different.
that is, yeah, it's dramatically different. But that figure is simply with COLA. I mean, I just figured it. That $95,000 difference is just adding a COLA.
He actually asked this year, because his goal was to do an actual, more of a pay scale.
Right.
He asked to do this and not have COLA added to ours this year.
But I'm telling you, this figure is not that. I don't know if he just made us one to say, okay, if we just, because I'm just telling you, this increase is only COLA.
Okay.
It's the difference in, it's 2,080,100, and then this figure is 2,166. You divide those two, and it's 1.04. I mean, well, let me take that back. I'm sorry, it's not 1.04, it's 4%. Never mind.
Yeah.
All
I was
right,
about to
forget
say,
it.
I just did it too, and I was like,
Sorry.
no, that's not right.
It's 1.04. I'm looking at it 1.04. So never mind.
Yeah.
Forget that.
But that was his.
Yeah.
In his request, he was going, he didn't want the county to give COLA to us this year. He'd rather break this down, raise his kind of more setting up a decent pay scale for longevity and different things like that, and not do COLA this year. So that was one thing on the budget.
Okay.
I think it was.
Get rid of the vote.
Yeah.
Okay, so when I'm changing this, he, on his proposed budget, he, has, like Brad was saying a minute ago, estimated life insurance as if everybody had a family plan. My calculations are in here at what people actually have. Which one do you want me to use? For health insurance for the sheriff's department.
What the actual plans are.
Right, so like, based on what everybody has chosen right now in the sheriff's department, it's 162.7 is what health insurance costs. He's estimated on here 274. Was his intention to hire anybody extra, do you know? Budget?
We're actually,
We're down one right now.
But does the budget have you hiring anybody above what's?
no.
current whole year?
I
Okay.
mean, I wouldn't
No,
go
we're-
all
no,
the way
we're
to
not
the
gonna hire above
actual,
what's
just
approved.
in case that
So I mean,
happens.
that's almost 100 grand over he's estimating for health insurance. So do you want me to use his estimate or when you're looking at this, or do you want me to use what I know it is for health insurance?
Why don't we-
162.7.
Because of the big numbers here, why don't we deal with the actuals, and then as we get to a more defined budget, then we can get into the fine tuning. That makes sense.
I mean, that would cut $100,000.
Well, then you got to keep up with the difference.
Right.
If you just do known number.
Right, if she said it's 162,
actuals.
yeah, just put it at 170 instead of his 274. Does that make sense?
It does, but then.
I don't think that's what he's
Remember
saying,
that.
though.
Is that what you're saying?
He's saying use the 260, isn't that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm saying just, what she's got is the actuals, just use that number.
Right.
Well,
Same thing on the
but she's
HRA,
not-
like
she doesn't.
he's estimated
No,
on the
I
HRA
can't tell.
32.5. That's what, so the HRA is based on, number one, the people who do get insurance, what insurance plan they have. So they get a certain HRA, 250, 500, 750. And then number two, anybody who waives health insurance, they get 2160. 2160 a year on their HRA. So he has that estimated at 32.5. I have the actual numbers. We pay 46.5 for that, and which is more. So this time, so last time it was, so it's the opposite of health insurance. So I'll use the actuals again. So it's, I tell you this to say, when we get to the bottom, my bottom number's not gonna match his bottom number, because I've used
What's
the
the
actuals
actual
on
again?
health insurance and
I missed
HRA.
it. The
So-
actual on HRA, I'm sorry, I missed it.
46.5.
With health insurance right now, we don't have, we still need to hire one more person we haven't hired yet, just because we were trying to make sure, we didn't know we were going to be at with fees, so when Deputy Chumler retired, we haven't filled that position yet. We've kind of worked through filling.
Okay, so Chumbler is who you have to
replacing, so-
replace? Okay, so that probably, do you know, have you already hired somebody?
No, that's,
Okay, so I'm just gonna assume that that person is gonna have full health insurance. How about that? Highest family plan.
I just know, in the past, he has said before, if somebody leaves, if a single guy leaves, and you hire somebody that has a family, if you don't have a little bit in there, then you're over. We'd rather, we usually do at the end of each year, have some to turn back in because of, but if you're so tight on there, if you have any of those changes, then you're instantly over budget. And I think that's why he's always put a little bit over it, because you can easily have those changes.
But I think your point is, or somebody, is that is all that could be spent for.
Health insurance.
If we're doing it this way, that's the thing. If you
unless
do
he
it the
comes
way
in
that
and
we
says he wants an
decided to do it
appropriation
last
transfer.
year, you could do whatever you wanted to with it. In this particular case, that's not the case.
Right. It has,
If
that
you're
line has to be
doing
spent on
line item by
HRA.
line item, which
Unless-
is what it should. yeah.
Unless a department head comes in and says, I see I'm gonna not use all
Right.
this, I would like to do an appropriation transfer. So then you'd have to say,
Yes.
no, we will intend that to only be spent on your HRA, or whatever you want.
Yeah.
And vice versa, if you don't budget for all of it and they run out because you do hire somebody with a family plan, then you would have to take from another item and appropriate to the.
And remember
to that.
too,
Agreed.
this
But
budget
you'd
has
have to-
built-in roundups. So,
Yeah.
like if somebody costs us $13,100 for health insurance, the formula automatically rounds it up to 14 grand. And so we have a little bit of leeway there. Does that make sense?
I mean,
It's usually not that big
makes
of a jump.
sense.
It's usually a couple $100s that it's
Yeah,
given
okay.
a little bit of and that's only
Yeah.
in payroll. So the other ones are not.
100 to the next 00
It just
is
depends
not
on-
a roundup
It just
to me,
depends on
but
what it
I
is.
get it. You
I'll
know.
have to look. I mean, we can change that too if you want to, the way it's rounded, but that will give us, I don't know, it seems to have worked in the past, the way it's rounded.
Yeah, I just.
The last two pages,
what
I
I was
believe,
thinking.
show kind of where we're at. Like I said, I know it was one lump sum, but it shows our breakdown of what we had our original line set for, because we still kept up with it internally, obviously. We didn't just put it wherever. So the last two pages that you have should be that breakdown of what was actually approved, what we spent, percentage that we still have left for where we're at right now, what we're estimated if one line's going to be over, one line's going to be under, things like that, so.
Plugging these in. Is that what you're doing right now?
Yep.
Just making sure. You know how I am with the quiet.
Nah, I'm sending
Because
it
I'm
out.
seeing, because I'm looking at, you know, the difference in what we would had on the screen versus this bottom end number is like $167,300 less. And I'd have to take the time to dive into it to see exactly where that, I'm saying his budget, this one versus the one that we're using is 160,000, 167.3 less.
Than what he gave you guys?
Okay,
Or the one that we
This,
have,
this is less. The one that you have is less than the one that was the wants, needs, or needs.
it's fuel. So, you don't
Oh.
have, he doesn't have fuel on this. Did he
Okay.
expect to not pay it? Did he expect the fiscal court to cover it with the fiscal court fuel? Do you know, and did he talk to you about that? Okay,
he was not on.
so it's fuel. Fuel's not on this. I have fuel in the budget at 100,000 for the sheriff's office. So,
There's a big portion of that difference.
And that was well, again, stinking, no line items, so,
Brad,
but we weren't, I mean, were we paying it? Is that
that's
the
one of the
point?
things that came up this year because of the bulk line. Who's paying fuel? And both sides said, not me. So, we need to make sure we iron that out for this year. Are we gonna
Okay.
separate the fuel costs or not?
Okay.
I think the biggest important thing is the historical data. I mean, and I know that we can do that with the WEX card, but it's the historical data to show what the actual cost for the operations of any department. And to me, I think that's something that I would want to know is what has it cost, and obviously there's ups and downs, and we're dealing with a freaking pipeline that's been hijacked, but the historical data and to be able to separate those out, and they should be budgeted dollars, but that's just my 2 cents on it.
so Erica, that's the difference that you're seeing in these two budgets, basically, is the biggest difference is the
One of
fuel.
them.
The fuel, the health insurance being different, and the HRA being different. And then there was another, I found one line where it had changed. I can't remember what it was, but it was only by like maybe $4,000 or $5,000. And then I think somehow we got off on what he intended for payroll and how I had it. But again, how I had it before I just changed it was with covering what's in the box now. And then I just assumed that anything over that he intended for overtime. But you just said he intends to do it a different payroll. So, I think that would maybe be part of the differences too, is the way the payroll's broken down. He has it basically in one whole number, and I had some
Yes.
overtime and I had the school resource officers broken out, so I've changed it to fit
Okay.
what he has just, provided. So as far as fuel, under the fiscal court, here it is right here. Just saw it and I lost it. There it goes, county fuel expenses. So we have 270 in at county fuel expenses right now to cover non-sheriff vehicles, and then 100,000 in for sheriff, so that's 370. And Brad can give you some WEX information on whether or not that's reasonable. Was Enterprise in here? It was, wasn't it?
Yes,
Gonna double check.
135.
Okay.
It's probably, like right now, from July 1 through 2021, total expense is 78,739. So about 80 grand for, I mean, you got a month and a half left, so that 100 grand for fuel is probably about right.
Yeah,
What'd you say it was currently, Brad? I'm sorry.
$78,739.
So, and
So that's from July 1 through today.
yeah.
Prices have
I was gonna
Oh.
say, you might have taken account of prices
Exactly.
going
Well,
up.
yeah, I mean, the last bill we got was about $3,000 higher than we previous did the month, and we had an issue yesterday. We had to increase our credit limit because it went up, shot up so quick, and where bills fell and everything, we had to, they cut our cards off, so, yeah. Yeah. Yep.
That's something that we need to think about, not only for the sheriff's budget, but for our budget as far as fuel. And if we need to change that. I agree with Judge. I feel like that the fuel should be split, and that way, when you look at the sheriff's office or any office, you'd see a total picture of what that office is like. I said that before, I think when we talked about the clerks, that was my opinion. If you
So
care to hear it.
do we have that in the others? Do we have that in road department?
Brad, do you
Or is
know
this the
now?
only
I
one?
think all
that
the other
would
ones
suggest to
are-
break out.
Yeah, I don't think we have it, and I think this is the only one that's
The
broken
road
out.
department has their own tank, and
Yeah.
that fuel for that is in their in their budget. And then the other vehicles are really just scatterings, and they're used by multiple departments.
So like, for
Talking
instance,
about, like, other elected official offices?
no, I think he's talking about the actual departments,
talking
like
about-
all departments, so animal control, emergency management, we don't
Yeah.
break their fuel amount out in their individual budgets.
Yeah, because
Right.
they used to be. And then we pulled
Right.
it all into one. I think that's where the confusion came from, I think last budget year or this budget year.
So what line item are we using for everything else?
I think it's in the fiscal court.
It's county fuel, and it's
So to give you an so that 78,000 number I just gave you, the total amount is 84,000. So you figure of 84,000, so what is that? Monty, do your math.
That's $6,000.
Thank you. So 6,000.
You want me to give you the percentage?
No, I don't.
It's basically 90.
Okay. So yeah, so you figure of all the fuel, 90% of it is the sheriff's office. Makes sense. Yeah, not including the road department because
Right.
they
Have
do
their own
not
tank.
use WEX. Yes,
Right.
that's correct.
that line is 01/50/25 4290 under fiscal court.
What did he have it set on the budget he submitted to you guys?
It's not on there.
It's not on there. I
Oh,
think we
okay.
just
That's the
discussed it.
difference.
Okay.
And then also, just to clarify, because another thing that the fuel was one of the things that came up this year with the bulk line deal. And another thing was the custodian. He has his custodian in this, right? Because they're not in the custodial
Okay, so
lines anymore.
that county fuel expense is way too much then. I thought you told me that, I mean,
We have
Right.
it set at 270 for the county part and 100 for the sheriff's part.
What is it in the road department? Make sure that doesn't come out of that one.
I mean,
Out of the fiscal court line item? So that does include the road department, that
Okay.
270, yes.
all right, so the road departments is not broken out of that. So it's the majority of that,
Uh-huh,
right?
uh-huh,
Okay.
yeah.
But the point is that it's not broken out
That's right,
into the.
correct.
road.
The only one that's pulled out is.
Sorry, it was previously and it's not now. They used to have a gas and fuel line, the road department.
I think part of that was too because everybody was filling up at the road department. And then you all had your own tank. So I think the thought was, all of it's coming from one. But now, we can literally run a report in WEX and,
And this is just my opinion, the intent was, yes, we can run it through WEX as a platform, but from a budgetary standpoint, we should be able to see what it's costing each agency. That way, from one fiscal year to another, if there's an increase, obviously, fuel goes up and goes down. But then you can also have, just putting those measures in place to where in previous years, we had, issues where fuel was being used when it shouldn't have been used. But two, from a management point, you can sit down and you can identify, well, are we driving too much for whatever department, not just the sheriff's department, but from a management point, an individual that's managing that operation can sit down and say, well, okay, are we spending too much on fuel for lack of better terms, useless driving, going here, going there when we can manage those dollars a little bit better, so. But using WEX, everybody using the WEX card, that's not a problem because we benefit from, I think in years past, it was, you guys had your own tank, the road department had their own tank. I don't know if the parks had a tank. I think they
They
did
do.
have a tank out there.
They do.
We had all these tanks, and each one was different, and so I think just from a management perspective, it's easier to manage, should be. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, from a budgetary standpoint, it's got to be paid. And if it's a cost to an operation, in this case, the sheriff's department, then it needs to be identified as a cost. Because that's a pretty good number.
I don't disagree with you on that. I just think if we're going to do that, I want us to remember that it's not in the road departments. And so if we try to compare the two subsidies, we do need to remember that we've broken that out of that one and we're not breaking it out of the road department. So that's I
Yeah.
guess that's the only.
Well, and like this budget doesn't have the dollars in it. The road department, it's in the fiscal court though, which falls directly under us. We are accounting for it. And we can
Oh, I know we're
pull,
accounting for it, yeah.
we can pull those numbers out to show what the total operational cost is for fuel. And again, it kind of goes back to, and the sheriff's department is different because, we are not their employer. So if you look at your expense overall, that expense should reflect in the budget. Pulling those individual datas out of the WEX, that's the great thing about the WEX is that you can pull whoever's using that WEX card and when they're using it, and things like that. That's more of the management piece of it.
Well, I think it's an excellent piece to have.
Yeah. All right, so we identified the difference in the, do we want to put that, let's put that in the budget so we can see that.
Yeah, just a second. What did you guys decide on? Keep the fuel in the, put up for sheriff?
Yeah, I think we need to reflect the fuel in their budget.
And should we increase that for 2022 just as a price?
Yeah, that's the second question. What do you want to put the fuel at for both departments? Or what are we going to guess the fuel's going to do this coming year?
You said both departments.
Well, for the overall budget and then the separate.
County, you talking about like the county fuel line and this one? And I mean, it's hard to know, I guess, what part of that expense through 331 that you have on there is price-related versus COVID-related.
At your next meeting, we'll open bids for annual bids, and part of that is fuel. We can gauge that number based on what the bid comes in at.
Oh,
Because
okay.
now that number will be set by the vendor, and that's the fuel that goes to the road department. But based on that number, we may be able to land on one that we use with the
Well,
WEX cards too.
That's fair. So you just use the 100 for now and the 270 in the
'cause that's
county
next
fuel
week.
line, and then, okay.
Okay. We can just come back to it after that.
It's just hard to know what the,
It'll be interesting to see what
Price
that
versus-
bid is. It'll be interesting to see what all the bids are.
It's going to be interesting to see how one can bid with.
Yeah,
and commit to that bid.
and commit to the bid.
And the commit to it, yeah.
One with the fuel, what they do is they price it, what is it, over rack or whatever, so they can adjust it based on their bid by the market. Some of those other items, they set it as this is the price per whatever, and that's it. So, yeah, fuel has the flexibility to go up and down.
Those coming in at the next meeting, or you're sending? We'll have those.
Yeah, we'll have them.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, good. Even in all the road department stuff is
Yep.
all that
Yep.
stuff in there. Okay.
Yeah, I'll do what I did last time. I'll open them all up and then put them all in a spreadsheet so you can see them all in one thing.
Okay, so that has the OTA subsidy at 1,719,900. And that difference from what he's presented with his printout here is the HRA, the health insurance, and then the difference that we have in ABC. He has it at 425, but I have it at what is left after the things we already talked about in ABC expense side.
So it's what, 1.7?
1,719,900. 1,719,900 subsidy. That is with, let me double check that it is with the fuel in there.
I was gonna say, is that fuel moved over?
That is with the fuel in the sheriff's office still.
Okay.
Where does that put us?
$1,449,000. Still unbudgeted, uncovered. Whatever the word is. 1,449,000.
You said fuel at what?
100,000.
100 even, okay.
So the packet that you provided, it has the salaries at, it has the employees with salaries at what he wants to change them to, right?
Correct.
The increases, okay.
That's his goal, this scale, what he's wanting to do.
So on these salary increases that are included in what he's asked for here, and I see that it has the new hourly rate. I don't see anything that has a comparison of the old to new. I'm guessing he didn't have anything in there. I could pull all that, it's just, it'll take me a few minutes unless y'all have it.
Current.
So it's just a scale, so it's not individuals.
Well, it is individuals, because the way he's wanting to break it out is longevity pay. And so depending on the number of years you have with us, adding I believe he's doing a nickel a year of longevity pay. So it would fluctuate between deputy to deputy as far as the actual percentage. It's not just across the board percentage.
Okay.
And all the fringe is based on that figure, right? Okay.
Yes, correct.
All right, so it's all reflected in there. All right.
After the sheriff, we have met with everybody. We've managed to shave about $700,000 off of the 2.1 that's needed to balance this budget. Roughly what, 1.4?
Want us,
1449.
before we're done with our part, do you want us, Sheriff said he's traveling, but he said he can call in if there's any specific questions, confusion on any of it that needs to be clarified, what he's asking, what he's done.
I'm going to give you a copy of this. We've asked for the MDTs, information on the MDTs. The required information, not really information, but what's required for the current MDTs. I'm going to give you a list of what's required. What we need to know is where you're currently at. Now, I know some of the, I know you're not at Windows 10 on all of your MDTs.
Tried to upgrade them. I
Wouldn't say all of them, but I think most of them are.
started to say there were a couple that we had issues with trying to upgrade, but I thought I'd got those lined out, because I had
Okay.
Kate, I know Captain Lane had one that the other day I was working on. I realized it wasn't Windows 7, so if we're not all there, we're almost
We're
completely
almost
there.
close. I'm going to give you this information, and this is basically pertaining to CGIS
Yes,
and the security, but pass that. And if you can give us that information, because we don't want you guys to have a problem with the CAD system.
The new CAD?
Yeah.
So this would be the requirements for us to be compatible on our MDT, is what you're saying?
Yes.
Oh, now we're definitely not up to a 500
Yeah.
gigabyte hard drive. Why does, just out of curiosity, why does it have to be a 500 gigabyte hard drive?
That's from KSP.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, they understand, because apparently they see it across the state, but those are the minimum requirements.
Okay.
So that's got a dollar attached to it.
Right.
So just, we need to know that.
the
There-
gigabytes.
There's twofold. There's a dollar attached to it, but also compatibility with the new system that's going in. And we've already talked to KSP, and they're going to work, with us to
Right.
get that, so.
Yeah, in several of the ones I've been able to upgrade. I mean, it was a minimal cost difference between a 250 or 500 gigabytes. So I went with 500 on several of them, but some of the ones that I was just able to, some of them I actually had to put a new hard drive in to be able to upgrade them. Others I was able just to do, they had the free upgrade from 7 to 10.
Right.
Some of those I left with the hard drive that was in them, so we'll have several that's still with the 256, hard drive that we'll have to upgrade, but
Yeah,
I'll get a number.
If you can get me the, what you have, what needs to be upgraded, and the number, that way, and the cost, that way we can look at that.
Yes, sir.
Something we'll need to budget for in 2022?
I'd say yes, yeah. There are some things that I think can be done. You're going to notice with the new upgrades, with the CAD system, but I think the biggest thing is just knowing why.
Right.
But then the intent, depending on how much, the intent is next budget year, or maybe even a grant. I don't know if we can try to find a grant, but to try to fix it as soon as possible. Yeah, it's just those small things that we don't, realize, but
Just don't think about it until it's in your face.
yeah.
Okay, I have something, as you guys were talking, I was doing some math. So on this budget, he is presented with the salaries that he's presented. I kind of took the salaries and took out who I thought was hazardous. I'm sorry, took out who I thought was non-hazardous. And so I'm thinking there's about 1,811,000-ish of hazardous payroll here. And at the new retirement rate, it's 44%. That's like 797,000 in hazardous retirement. And he's only has his retirement match set at 633. So my thought is that there might be something off there on his retirement calculation. So if you can just ask him to look at that again and email me about it, and that way I can convey that to them. The disadvantage of just going in and plugging in what he's telling me he wants to be his budget is that it takes out that formula, and the formulas tell me exactly what
And it should be,
retirement rates will be.
it should be how much?
Well,
No,
he
what
has
was
it
the
at
number?
633, but when I just did really rough math on who was hazardous, and it's, the new rate's 0.44, that puts it at 797,000 just for hazardous retirement. So I think we're off there. That's not even with the non-hazardous. So just, if you don't mind, ask him to
Yes.
recalculate that, and then, or show me how he calculated it, or something, and I'll relay it to them.
Erica, can you share the one that y'all were working on up there? Can you share that?
This budget? Yeah, I
The
can
way,
send it.
the way it was presented, because like I said, we just have a different breakdown. Would you share?
I just changed every single thing to the same as this, except for
Okay.
those three things, but yeah, I'll tell you, I'll email to you which
Thank you.
ones are different.
Any other questions? All right. Appreciate it, guys.
Thank you.
This is actually National Police Officer Week, so Judge Neal, I know you served a career in it, so appreciate your service as well.
Hey,
And
appreciate what you guys do.
I think we have a wonderful community here, and I think our law enforcement here and this community serves to be part of the community, not just, policing. There's problems all over the nation, and I'm grateful for this community, and I just take a minute to thank that as well, and thank y'all's support.
Any ideas overall on this budget? We're still almost 1.5 million short.
my idea is I'd like to have it emailed based on what this is. And, I mean, I'll just be honest. I mean, since the last meeting, it's been, what, less than a week, or right at a week or something. I've been busting my tail to try to figure out this jail thing, so I need some time.
The jail is, it's been nobody has been able to figure it out.
Well,
Because you've got a combination of, I don't think the jail alone is going to solve this budget. You got unfunded mandates that the General Assembly's going to have to get involved. That's what jails across the state have been screaming. There were discussions under the Bevin administration as far as privatizing it. I mean, one of the best things I've heard from a judge executive is you look at the system that's in place. There are individuals involved in how an individual ends into our jail. And it's our purse that's being affected. We have basically statutory requirements that we have to meet. I don't know. We're going to put a graph together for you guys to see just the statutory requirements. We just ran through the PVA statutory requirement, $100,000. It's almost like the General Assembly doesn't realize when you total up all those statutory requirements. I've heard it from the cities. Well, we pay property taxes, okay, but you don't pay for the jail. You put inmates in our jail, 911 service. You don't pay for the 911 service. So when you start comparing that, and that's what I want to show. I want to show the statutory requirement that falls upon this fiscal court to fund. You can look through the budget and see the different statutory requirements that we have to the jail, and you can put that number in there. I'd almost bet, without doing the numbers, just seeing some of the other counties, the statutory numbers are greater than what we actually bring in the property taxes, and say our 2 cities or 3 cities. But 2, the AOC, the judges, they put folks into our jail. It's not hitting AOC's purse. I mean, there's a whole lot of things, and I don't know what the answer is to that, but it definitely is a flawed system because we, as a fiscal court, all we control is the budget. And when you get down to it, this is who gets kicked in the chin, and statutorily, I've got to submit a budget, by May that's balanced, or present to you guys to be presented to DLG by May that's balanced. And we're sitting here trying to balance a budget. And the community, I'll just say it, I don't think the community across the state, they really don't understand how it all affects each other, from the state government all the way down to the local governments, and those statutory requirements that we have, and how it really, we're funding the jail for the ups and the downs. And that's why it's extremely important on the management piece. I mean, we should be making sure that every I is dotted and T is crossed, and then we get into the other constitutional offices, and then we have our own direct employees that we manage. COVID obviously had some factor, but it didn't have the factor. We knew 6 years ago that we could have one issue where, say, and right now, some of the plants, at least one, is laying some folks off. I mean, we have a big layoff. Our OTA, we're feeling that overnight. And so we've been fortunate. Some of the other counties judges that I've talked to, they have been, last year I was talking with a fellow judge in Eastern Kentucky where he was already at $1 million, over $1 million short in his jail, and then COVID hit. So there are definitely some other counties that are in worse shape than we are. We're very blessed, but needless to say, we still have the same issues. Did we ever, Brad, on the caps? I mean, I know we got the vacation payout issue. Did we ever get clarification on that? I know there was some discussion on some of our other offices that have their own policies and they have a cap, and some of those individuals are way above their cap.
I was told by the sheriff the reason why they are, some of his are outside of his policy caps is because in his language it says, or otherwise approved by the sheriff.
Okay, so
they have specific people that may have fallen. He basically outlines this is the cap unless I say the cap doesn't apply to you.
okay, and so and to me, you know, that needs to be discussed because our employees, we have a cap. So we have employees who have met their cap and they're not accruing, and we're holding them accountable to our policy. When we have other policies that are at the discretion of, well, to some degree, but where is the management of that? Because the accrual, we're talking, we've got individuals that, and correct me if I'm wrong, anywhere from 400 to 800 above the cap. And when you look at the payout, it's going to affect our budget, our subsidy, basically. And this didn't just happen overnight. This is accrued from, years of just having that language and having that flexibility, but was it really managed? Or, is it just a way to honestly set aside a certain amount of monies to where when you retire or leave, you get that cash payout, that's one way to look at it, but the management of it is it's affecting our budget, and then I got employees that come to me and they say, hey, wait a minute, we're paying attention and we know that you're holding us accountable to this, but yet over here, seems like it's there's no accountability there. And then what is the value of me as an employee and how much, you pay me, how much of a value am I to the overall operation? And it's tough. It's very difficult to navigate. When we put a policy in place, we put that policy in place. For the most part, in the admin code, we've put that in place over the years to have some structure in place. The employees have done a great job, for the most part, of accepting it and understanding that that is the process. But it's a slippery slope. And, you know, I just caution our decisions with that slippery slope, because once you go off on that slope, you know, then we're getting into the only way to really resolve some of these issues. Because these monies, I'm just going to take a sidestep here. These monies, these federal dollars, they are not revenue. And I know you guys know that, but that is not revenue. So that means they're not going to be there forever. They're not even going to be there probably next year. And we really do have to look at county government in Marsh County in its whole, because I don't want to get in a situation, because I look at it as I'm a taxpayer, and I am not going to pay taxes in this county when I can see in the budget where I'm throwing up the red flag by saying, wait a minute, when I worked in the private sector, or when I worked outside of this office, I didn't have that. You know, there were a lot of restraints in place in the private sector. If it's a business, if this was our business, I know for a fact we would be sitting at the table with whatever officer, with whatever management or leader, having the same discussions, because it's affecting our business. And that's what I'm saying. We need to make sure that we, even during these times, we look at it as far as what's it going to cost the taxpayer. I mean, at the end of the day, nobody likes it, but that's why we're in these seats. We have to make tough decisions, but and we definitely got to look at the bigger picture. I will still say, back in 15, when we first looked at the budget, the 911 discussion was on the table. Now, it was way before I got here, but it was definitely on the table. And to have 911 in our community, and I will stand by this 100%, because that subsidy is huge on our budget. And when I show you, you know, what I'm talking about by the statutory requirements, you're going to see, and I shared with you the letter I got from Calvert City and the resolution I got from Benton. You know, those monies that they pay, in my opinion, go to cover those statutory requirements that we are obligated to fund. 911 is its own separate entity. It's a service that everybody in the community should be paying for. But that's not the case. And that is something that we can directly control. And that's why we did what we did as a court, to get 911 properly funded, and to get that subsidy off of our budget, so that it'll free up those dollars. And I can tell you, if you look at 911 and the budget right now, if we were sitting this year in that situation, I know it's a little over $800,000, but it's a little over $600,000 that we would have in our OTA, because that's where we subsidize out of. And that 1.449 looks a lot better by having that $600,000+ subtracted from it. And, we should be proud to say that we've got a better service for the citizens in our community with the new 911 center. But those decisions, we have to look at it. The jail, the jail, there's no way that governments, county governments, the General Assembly is going to have to step in at some point. But until then, we all have to make sure that we're managing the best way that we can to keep that subsidy down. And the sheriff's department's no different. The expenses, I just presented Keiko's cost to us, and 58% is from the sheriff's department as far as the increase. Payroll is majority of the increase. So there is an expense. We just talked about the retirement. That percent increase in hazardous duty is very expensive. But that's hitting our, he just reported 1.89 in receipts or fees, and that doesn't cover the total operation of that office. And, that's hitting our OTA account. But can it be better? Absolutely. I think everything from an overview, detailed overview, yes, I think everything can be better. And I am concerned. I know, Monty, you and I disagree on the federal dollars, but I am concerned because it gives a false sense of, and I'm not saying to you directly, I'm just saying it gives a false sense that it solves our problems. And it doesn't. We had some of these issues known before the jail reform was known. Obviously, the sheriff office, I've been very vocal on some of the decisions that's affecting our dollars, our purse. But overall, those dollars that are coming in, and I know some of you have been contacted by the same folks that I've been contacted by, everybody wants those monies. And, we have to tell them, no, we're not even in a position to make any decisions because this right here is the gorilla in the room. And it's going to be there, I feel, to a certain degree after these federal dollars come and go. But I don't want to rain on the parade. There are some good things in the works that we are doing. It just takes time for those things to develop. And I can tell you that we're slowly seeing, the fruits of our labor, but it just takes time, and we can't lose focus on that. And this is a challenging situation because it's competing with the same dollars. I just ask you guys to look at it in a way that there's got to be some tough decisions to be made, and there's no other easier way to say it than there's got to be some tough decisions that have to be made. We have to manage every decision that we make. We don't have to agree, but we do have to manage the best way that we can. I wish that, and I think that in the coming meetings that we've got, sharing some more information in executive session, we can elaborate a little bit more on some things, but it's not going to solve our problems overnight. This is something that I think can put us in a position this time next year where we don't have a safety net. I just want to make sure that we don't end up in that situation, regardless of who's sitting where. I don't care about that. I don't want to see this court in a situation like that, because at the end of the day, the taxpayer, and I'm a taxpayer, is flipping the bill, and I don't like paying for something that isn't squared away. So anyways, off my soapbox. We still have 1.5 basically that we've got to identify. We've turned over a lot of rocks here.